Good morning. Our Holy Father, Pope Francis, has spoken often about the need for us and for the Church as a whole to go out to the peripheries of society. Now, on a day like today, I don't think anybody wants to go to the periphery of anything. We just want to stay put. But I think it's a very important element and quality of our Christian faith to go out to the peripheries, to the edges, to the ends. Just a few days before Pope Francis was elected Pope, he, as Cardinal Bergoglio, spoke to the College of Cardinals and said this: "We must get out of ourselves and go to the periphery. We must avoid the spiritual disease of the Church that can become self-absorbed. When this happens, the Church itself becomes sick." Now, with just a superficial reading of the Gospels, if someone just came for the first time to the Bible and started reading about Jesus' life and his ministry and his words, they would immediately see one thing very clearly, and that is that the Son of God goes in search of, befriends, touches, heals, and saves the periphery. Those on the edges, the poor, the possessed, the ostracized, the sick, and in today's gospel, the leper. What does this say to us about Jesus Christ? What is he revealing to us about himself in his very action, especially in today's gospel, to reach out to those that are considered to be beyond the reach of society? I think it's important, first of all, to realize that this leper that Jesus encounters is a man suffering from a deadly disease. It was a death sentence until 1940, when we finally discovered a cure for leprosy. But before then, and especially in ancient times, a leper was a man or woman on death row. It was unavoidable. And so, we find in our first reading from the book of Leviticus certain regulations being set down in the Old Testament for someone who's discovered to have this disease. It says if you have this kind of, possibly this disease, some sort of skin ailment, you should go to the priest and have him judge whether you have leprosy. I don't know about you, but praise God that we don't do that anymore. I probably would tell someone with poison ivy that they have leprosy. But they would go to the priest and he would evaluate them. And if in fact it was determined that they had leprosy, they were to rend their garments, Leviticus tells us. Their head was to be bare. They were to muffle their beards and to cry out, "Unclean, unclean." They were completely ostracized from society. People wouldn't want to get even 100 yards close to them. This is the kind of disease that in ancient times they thought could be communicated just simply by one touch. If a leper touched you, you could get the disease. Unclean, unclean. Yet what does Jesus Christ do in today's gospel? He sees the man in need. He stretches out his hand and he touches the leper. What's happening here is not that the disease is being communicated from the leper to Christ, but because Christ is the divine physician, because he is the Son of God, it is his very divine life and his healing that is communicated from him to the leper by one touch. This is the divine logic of love. This is who Christ is, our divine physician that comes to heal. He goes to the very periphery of society and of our own human experience to literally touch that which is diseased in us, heal it, and bring us back to him. So then, what does this reveal about ourselves? Well, it reveals that we're the ones on the periphery. We are lepers, every one of us. And I can say that without looking at your skin. We all bear scars, don't we? We all bear the scars of loss, of suffering, of difficulty, struggle of our daily life. And above all, we have the worst kind of leprosy that affects every human being. We call it sin. This coming week, we will begin the great season of Lent. And I call it a great season because it is a season that the church gives us to help us realize that every one of us is a leper. Every one of us is in need on the periphery of a divine physician, of Christ. Pope Pius XII once said that the greatest sin of the 20th century is the lack of a sense of sin. I think that goes for the 21st century as well. We need to have a good sense of sin, that we all have these blotches on our souls, and that we are in need of Christ to reach out to the very depths, to our very periphery, and to say, I do will it. Be clean. This leper, I think, also provides us with a model for how to live Lent a little bit better. The first thing that St. Mark tells us is that this leper comes before Jesus and he kneels down to beg for a cure. Now that's not just some kind of superficial action. This is a very specific kind of action that would have been abhorrent to a Jew unless it was a sign of total surrender to the will and power of another. It was a gesture for a Jew that was only to be done before God. And this leper comes and kneels before Christ, surrendering his will, putting himself, if you will, under the power of Christ. Adoration and our submission to God is essential to who we are as human beings and essential to our happiness. This Lent will have opportunities to deepen our adoration of God. I will exhort you, recommend strongly to you, that in the next few days to make a little resolution. A resolution for one way in which you can increase and deepen your prayer life and mine. If it's at all possible to come to Mass during the week or on Saturday, to join us for the Stations of the Cross every Friday evening, to maybe take part or all of the Rosary and try to do that every day, to pick up the Scriptures and make a little plan to read a chapter of the Gospels each day. Whatever it might be, Lent is a time in which we can deepen our kneeling before Christ, our adoration of the Godhead. Then the leper, after kneeling, turns to Christ and says something very unusual. He says, "If you wish, you can make me clean." Now think about that for a moment. This leper is the only one who is in need of Christ's saving power, who leaves it up to Jesus to decide what to do. He doesn't come and say to him, "Make me clean." No, he says, "If you wish." Meaning that Christ could have said no, and this leper still would have been satisfied. Do you see how wonderful this man is to leave it up to Christ, to let his providence guide his life, to totally surrender to his will no matter what it might mean, including if it meant that he continued to be a leper. Suffering is not easy. It's not easy when it's physical, but it's especially not easy when it's emotional and spiritual. It weighs on us. And sometimes we want to go to Christ and say, "You owe it to me. Take this cross away. Heal me now." And yet that may not be what's best for us. This suffering can abound to God's glory, can help us grow in virtue and holiness. We don't really know. We need to leave it to Him. And so during Lent, we can accept those difficult sufferings and crosses. We can take on some little penances as well, to be able to say to Christ, "I'm willing to even suffer for your sake. I'm willing to suffer even to grow in holiness because you wish it. Your will be done, not mine. If you wish, you can make me clean." And then finally, after this leper receives the great grace of healing, Jesus tells him not to say anything. Well, the leper, of course, doesn't listen to Christ. St. Mark tells us the man went away and began to publicize the whole matter. He's one of the first evangelizers. He gives witness to what has happened in him and for him so that others might come to Christ as well. Faith is personal, but it's not private. Our faith is meant to be shared. And during Lent, maybe one of those resolutions could be ways in which I can share my faith with others, in which I can tell them in one way or another what my faith has meant to me in my relationship with Christ. Maybe it's as simple as inviting that relative or friend who hasn't been to confession in a long time. Invite them to confession this Lent. There's a beautiful way to publicize the mercy of God and make it available to someone you love. Some of you might remember the movie The Untouchables, right, starring Kevin Costner and the best 007 there ever was, Sean Connery. And it's the story about how Elliot Ness finally captured and brought down Al Capone. Well, at a certain point in the movie, there's a man who's sent by Al Capone to offer a bribe to Elliot Ness to keep him from pursuing Capone. And of course, Ness refuses the bribe. The man says, "You're making a mistake." And Ness says, "Yeah, I know. Well, I've made them before, and I'm beginning to enjoy them." And the man says, "You fellas are untouchable. Is that the thing? No one can get to you? Hey, everyone can be gotten to." And with that, Elliot Ness threw the man out of his office. But the man was right. He was right. No one is untouchable if we just give God permission to heal us, to save us. It is Jesus Christ who comes to the very periphery of our lives. And there we are, as lepers before him, especially affected by sin. He comes to ask us, do you want to be healed? May our answer be this Lent and always, if you wish to, you can make me clean.